Amina, good morning. Thanks for logging in. Always nice to have you logged in. Just waiting for that to go live. I can share the screen in the meantime. Let's do that. There we go. Different tabs in place. YouTube is taking a while. Up, no, it's moving along now. Maybe, maybe. Yep, there we go. And just resize that window to make it fit. Okay. So we'll give it just another few seconds to let people log in because we are only just at 12. And I know that people are coming from work or from other chores and tasks and want to make sure they all have a moment. Okay. Just wait till it clicks over to 12:01, the magic hour. All right. Well, my clock says 12:01, so let's go ahead and get down to work. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining me again to study a little Torah. As always, we never have enough time to go through all of a parasha, especially one like Yitro. Yitro is the parasha most famous for the giving of the Ten Commandments, perhaps secondarily most famous for the visit by Yitro himself. That is to say, Moses' father-in-law, and some very important judicial rules being established there. But I want to both zoom out and zoom in a little of what is taking place here at Sinai, because after all, this is a very special event with the giving of Torah. And the Aseret HaDibrot, the Ten Commandments, as the sort of centerpiece of the, to use the fancy word, theophany, the moment of hearing God by the nation. And I want to look at the preamble because, unsurprisingly, for such a special event, the Torah gives us some buildup. It gives us some description. Oftentimes, the Torah will just throw us into a particular thing, but here, the Torah really wants to sort of build it up. However, in the buildup, when we zoom in, we see some things that perhaps are a little head scratchy. Definitely, the movie Ten Commandments did not take care of this. Prince of Egypt, the other famous movie for the Exodus, just sort of hand waved this whole section off. But the Torah thought it was worth time, and therefore it is worth time, and we're going to give it at least a little bit of time. Obviously, an hour or a bit less, we'll see how long it takes, is never enough, but that's why we continue to study throughout the week and throughout our lives. So with that in mind, let's go ahead and jump in. We're going to pick up here on 19, which is the chapter of the preamble, the build-up towards the giving of the Torah. Starting with verse 1. In the third month, after going out of the children, after the going out of the children of Israel from the land of Egypt, on that day they came to the wilderness of Sinai. So this is one of the other marker points for the holiday of Shavuot to help us get why it is on the 50th day after the Exodus that we celebrate the giving of Torah. But that's a whole nother calculation, and I've done other classes on it. Go look them up. They moved from Rephidim and came to the wilderness of Sinai and encamped in the wilderness. There Israel encamped opposite the mountain. So Midbar, we're going to talk about that another time, but just as a reminder for those that are familiar and as a new insight, the wilderness is the best term, which is why Fox uses it. It's often been called the desert, but the desert was called the desert because it was deserted. Unfortunately, in most modern English minds, desert invokes entirely something like the Sahara or the Gobi, and that is not what it means. It simply means an uninhabited place, an area that was not populated by population, by people. It was deserted. So Midbar, wilderness, the wild places as opposed to human settlement places. This is where the Torah is being given, and now the people have arrived at the base of the mountain. Now, Moshe went up to God, and Adonai called out to him from the mountain, saying, "Say thus to the house of Yaakov, to tell the children of Israel." So this is our first instance of Moses going up the mountain, or at least ascending in some manner, as he prepares for the giving of the Torah. So he goes up, and God is going to give him some instructions. "You yourselves have seen what I did to Egypt, how I bore you on eagle's wings and brought you to me." So this is the establishment of the relationship, if you will, clarifying exactly what God did and how that relates to the people there. As a cute aside, there are a number of people who claim that this verse is the reason why the Philadelphia Eagles won the Super Bowl, because this year the parasha talks about being born aloft on eagle's wings, and well, they did an awful lot of that. So I don't actually take that seriously. Anybody who tells you that they have a good betting advice based on their interpretation of the parasha is doing not only Torah a disservice, but also your trust a disservice. "So now, if you will hearken, yes, hearken to my voice and keep my covenant, you shall be to me a special treasure from among all peoples. Indeed, all the earth is mine, but you shall be to me a kingdom of priests, a holy nation. These are the words that you are to speak to the children of Israel." All right, so we had in the previous verse that God's connection, which is that he had brought us out of Egypt in this dramatic and amazing fashion. And then God tells us, and there is a second part to this. I didn't just take you out because it was nice. I took you out also because we are going to have a brit. We are going to have a covenant. The covenant is this open-ended relationship. It is more nebulous than a contract where every little detail is spelled out, but it is also more personal than a contract. It is something that is built on the trust of the two parties to fulfill it not only to the letter of the law, but to the spirit. And God is promising that we will be this Am Segula, that we will be this treasured people, that we will have a special role, a special destiny. Everyone has a destiny, and this is ours, because everyone on earth is God's, but we will still fill a special role of being Kohanim, of being priests, that we will be this Goy Kadosh, we will be this holy nation. Now, what does that mean? Well, that's a whole nother long discussion, and really pretty much the heart and soul of Judaism. But the very, very short version, because we need to have some understanding before we see the people's response, is that just as within a community, there are some people that are set aside to administer to certain rites, rituals, and teachings and learning that we call the Kohanim, that we call the priests, that Israel is going to have the opportunity to play that role for the world. That is to say, just as you would expect the Kohanim to be instructing and guiding and sharing everything they could about God for the nation, we would expect that the Jews will also want to share the beauty of God's teaching. Now, note, share, not impose. We are not here to conquer, and we are not here to demand allegiance or subservience, but we are meant to be teachers. And a teacher is one of the most cherished positions in all of the world, or at least it ought to be. And if you don't think that way about teachers, then I apologize for any bad experiences you've had, but don't take that out on Torah. Just be disappointed that you didn't get the teachers that you deserve. All right, so that's the idea. I took you out of Egypt. You're going to have this job of being Kohanim for me at large. And what do you think? Well, verse 7. Moshe came and had the elders of the people called, and he set before them these words, with which Adonai had commanded him. So Moses is coming back, and he's relaying the words. And all the people answered together. They said, "All that Adonai has spoken, we will do." And Moshe reported the words of the people to Adonai. Okay, so in verse 8, two things happen. One, the people getting the information from the elders who got it from Moses, who got it from God, all agree that indeed they are prepared to sign on the dotted line. They are prepared to agree to this covenantal relationship with God, that they will act as the Kohanim, that they will act as a Goy Kadosh, a holy nation, and that this will be governed by whatever God is about to continue to tell, right? What God has spoken, we will do. And the second part of verse 8 is Moses reports the words to Adonai. Now, normally, as my regular students will know, I love Everett Fox's translation because it is just difficult enough to recognize some of the irregularities of the Hebrew. But here, we don't actually get it. He smooths it out a little bit. We have this word reported in the English, which is trying to translate vayashev in the Hebrew. And most of the commentators believe that vayashev is actually referring to returning, that Moses carried back to God, would be the clunky English version, the words of the people. And that does seem to work. I mean, the word report is certainly catching that flavor, except carried back to has a more directional feel to it, which is where we begin to wonder, how many times is Moses going up and down Mount Sinai? I mean, it's not a big mountain. Famously, it is not a big mountain. But even still, it seems maybe unusual that he has to go back. It also is going to raise a question, which our commentators will help us discuss. Why does Moses have to report this? We all understand why Moses has to report God's words to the people, because it is only Moses who can hear God's words with such clarity that they can be conveyed without any imagination, without any emotion that is tainting, coloring, or reshaping them. But God knows what the people responded. God knows their hearts. I mean, God knows everything that is going on. That's kind of what omniscient means. So why is Moses acting as a messenger in that direction? So that is something we're going to have to come back to wrestle with. But let's continue the drama as we move forward into verse 9. Adonai said to Moshe, "Here, I am coming to you in a thick cloud, so that the people may hear when I speak with you, and also that they may have trust in you forever." And Moshe took the words of the people to Adonai. Okay, so first of all, we get another, he took the words, although here, vayaged is a different verb, and this is from the same root of that gives us the word Haggadah, the telling of the story of the Exodus itself. That's a standard Hebrew word used all over the place. So telling the words makes good sense here. That's exactly what he's doing. But I thought he already returned the words in the previous verse. So why are we getting this a second time? And does this mean that there was another up and down in the middle of the episode that we didn't quite get? I mean, after all, Moses went up to tell God about what the people said, or did he stay down when he did that? He went up, let's say, and then Moses says, by the way, I'm going to come into a cloud. That way everyone will know that I'm talking to you, and then they'll actually trust you, because otherwise, right now, they've only got your word for it. And that may be normal in many of the other faith traditions of the world, where a single person will seclude themselves or have access to visions or texts that no one else has. But Judaism seems to be a little skeptical of that kind of revelation. And while it may be fine for the individual, we as a nation are going to want a little more evidence that this person is actually speaking on behalf of God rather than just their own interpretation, good though that may be. And so this whole scenario of the giving of the Aseret HaDibrot, the Ten Commandments, the giving of Torah at Sinai with all of the thunder and clouds and everything else, is precisely there so that the people will believe Moses when he's telling them things that weren't done at that moment. That this is the president, telling you, I have appointed this man as my second in command. He is going to give you, the report. This is meant to assure us that indeed the big boss has given this person this authority. So we continue with that designation and we move on to verse 10. Adonai said to Moshe, go to the people, make them holy today and tomorrow. Let them scrub their clothes. Now, wait a minute, hold on. Was he still with God? Or did he report? Or did he come back? You can see how this gets a little confusing. But for the moment, let's just say that he was with God up to this point, and that God is saying an additional set of instructions. That the people have to prepare themselves. They have to launder their clothes, that they may be ready for the third day. For on the third day, Adonai will come down before the eyes of all the people upon Mount Sinai. But again, this is going to be a moment where everybody experiences this in order that they, A, have the experience of God and understand that they are entering into a covenant that is going to be, 3,000 years long, plus, God willing, and two, that they will continue to trust Moses even after this amazing moment. And as he continues to set up, fix boundaries for the people all around, saying, take care against going up the mountain or against touching its border. Whoever touches the mountain is to be put to death. Yes, death. No hand is to touch him, but he is to be stoned. Yes, stoned, or shot. Yes, shot. Whether beast or man, he is not to live. When the sound of the ram's horn is drawn out, they may go up on the mountain. So there's going to be this waiting period. There's going to be a very strong barrier to entry, and then the giving is going to take place. All right, well, we're going to stop there because it goes on into additional details and some things that we've covered in other classes. But I want to go back to where we actually agreeing and where in the process were we agreeing to it. That is to say, with Moses going up and down and Moses relaying the words of the people twice, it says, in two different verbs, then what was actually being relayed? What was really going on here? Because after all, as impressive as the Ten Commandments are, and the whole rest of the giving of the Torah, the fact that we agree to this is really what is revolutionary, what is changing the world at this moment. Because if we had said, nah, we're good, thanks for the whole Exodus thing, but, we'll just carry on doing as we've been doing. We don't need more instruction. We don't need to be this Goy Kadosh, this holy nation. We don't want to be the Kohanim, the priests of the world. No, thank you. We're happy being shepherds and in just the most mundane, non-metaphorical way. Then the story would have changed and would have been over. So what actually was said here is of monumental importance, and why they said it is of monumental importance. So with that, we're going to go ahead and jump into the into our texts of commentary and see what we can make of this whole process. So first of all, we're going to look at this agreement of what the people are signing on the dotted line for. And so we're going to begin with Midrash Tanchuma. Rabbi, that's Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi, said, at the time that the Israelites stood at Sinai, all agreed with one accord to receive with joy the yoke of the kingdom of heaven. As it is said, and all the people answered together and said, ... All right, so first thing we get here is that what they are agreeing to is what we call Ol Malchut Shamayim, the yoke of the kingdom of heaven. A yoke is spelled like this, not the middle part of an egg. The yoke, when spelled Y-O-K-E in English, is the special collar that goes around the neck and shoulders of an animal, like a horse or a cow or an ox, that allows them to then pull a cart or a plow or some other heavy implement. And it is through the yoke that the farmer can control them, can not only multiply their power by allowing them to pull with their whole body rather than trying to tie it to their tail or something silly, but Also, it is with the reins through the yoke that the farmer is not allowed, but is capable of steering this animal. And that is the symbolism here, that we are stepping into the yoke, that we are willingly taking on this burden. We are willingly taking on this collar, which will guide and steer us in our lives, because we are joyfully acknowledging that this is good, that this is a wonderful thing, that this relationship, as the covenant is establishing, is a benefit. But we continue, because as they sign on this dotted line, according to the Midrash, they are making one stipulation. And furthermore, they pledge themselves in behalf of each other. That is to say, it's not just us individually that are pledging, but it is us, the group, the we of the group, that are pledging. And we're not just pledging each individually to God, we're also pledging each to each other, and all of us with each other, to ensure that we are together in this matter. At the time, the Holy One, blessed be He, sought to make a covenant with them concerning the hidden and revealed matters. So the revealed matters is more prosaic than it sounds. Revealed matters means the things that happen in public, as opposed to the hidden matters, which means the things that happen in private. And God was saying, look, as a group, I am asking you to administer the issues that are still within private life, but meaning without witness, without anybody else involved, as well as the things that are in the public square. But the people said, we will make a covenant with you concerning the revealed matters, the public matters, but not concerning that which is hidden, lest one of us sin in secret, and the entire congregation be held responsible because of him. As it is said, the secret things belong to the Lord our God, but the things that are revealed belong to us. And that's Deuteronomy 20:29. In order that we may perform all the words of this law. Therefore, God spoke all these words. So God agrees and goes on, and we get the rest of the Torah. So what is being added here by the Midrash is the understanding, through the lens of Deuteronomy 29, is that when we said we will do everything, we didn't mean everything, because how can we all be responsible for the things that we don't know someone else has done? And that would be a foolish covenant to make, because then we would be saying to God, if any one of us transgresses in private and no one else knows about it, we should all be punished. And that's not the way it's meant to be. That things that are done in public, yes, those we are responsible for. If I see somebody stealing, then I will be a witness against them in court, and we will take care of that matter. But if somebody steals in complete secrecy and nobody knows who did it or how it was done or anything else, and it's impossible for us to solve despite all of the efforts of the community, well, the community shouldn't be blamed for not being able to reveal that which was hidden, because after all, that's kind of God's job. So this is a small codicil, a small amendment to what God was proposing, says the Midrash, and it's a reminder from our commentary that the Torah doesn't ask us to police the internal state or the perfectly secret private actions of others. It asks us instead to be the stewards of the public square, to not only behave correctly, which is incumbent upon each of us individually, but to ensure that we are behaving collectively in a correct manner, which is a congregational responsibility. Okay, but let's get back to that question that we first started off with, which is, why is Moses reporting? Why is he a messenger to God, not just a messenger for God? Rashi, of course, will start us off. And Moses returned the words of the people to the Lord. But was it really necessary for Moses to deliver the reply to God? God is omniscient, as we talked about. But the explanation is that Scripture intends to teach you good manners from the example of Moses. For he did not say, since he who sent me knows the reply, there is no need for me to report it. Now, this may seem almost trite, that the Torah would have Moses do something that was completely unnecessary just so the rest of us can learn etiquette. But the thing is that that phrase, good manners, is really doing a lot more than just saying that this is a polite thing to do. This is saying that this is essential for everyone else who is not omniscient, meaning everyone but God. That, yeah, this is the way you need to behave. And there are many examples in the Torah where God, Moses, Abraham, and others will behave in ways that don't fit logically within the God is omniscient camp, but absolutely are essential for how we are to conduct ourselves. And if any of them had behaved in a way that was only applicable when you're dealing with an omniscient being, then it would not have been as instructive and helpful to the rest of us who will never behave or never interact in this way with such an omniscient being. So don't take for granted that other people know what was said or what the reply would be. You give it back, you give it honestly, you give it correctly. That has to be constantly there. So on the one hand, why do we have this strange verbiage? Well, that's because Moses is just demonstrating to us that this is how you would handle it in every human interaction, which is going to be all the rest of our interactions. All right. Ramban has a slightly different twist. Now, he doesn't attack Rashi as he often does. He's a little bit more discreet on his own. Vayashev, as we talked about, that word that can mean and he brought back or and he delivered Moses, the words of the people to the Lord. This means that Moses returned before him to the mountain with the people's answers. So rather than saying that it is him just bringing, this is really doubling down on the idea that it's returning, again, going back up the mountain. Now, everything is revealed to him, and he did not inquire of him, what did this people answer you? Meaning that as it said that Moses returns, we might have thought that God should have an explicit statement in the text of, so what did they say? But God didn't need to do this. So this is where we see that God is still felt as omniscient by the Torah, and Moses's behavior is more instructive for the rest of us rather than instructive to God, rather than telling God something God didn't know. We can see that because if God had really been curious what the answer was, God would have begun with the phrase, what did the people answer you? And then Moses would have been giving it. And we get an example elsewhere. It is similar in meaning to the verse, and the Eternal heard the voice of your words when you spoke to me, in Deuteronomy 5, when Moses is doing a recap of all of this. And when Moses came before him, the Holy One, blessed be he, said, I come to you in a thick cloud, that the people may hear when I speak with you, and may also believe you forever. Then Moses said before him, Master of the universe, your children are people of faith, and they accept upon themselves whatever you will speak. So Ramban is putting this into the rest of the choreography of trying to lay out exactly when different phrases are being said in order for us to see a deeper conversation here. That it isn't just a gopher running back and forth between the people and God, although that is certainly a holy mission, but that this is hinting at God's trust of the people as well as Moses's trust of the people, and reminding all of us of this drama that's taking place here, this incredible moment where the people are exhibiting such amazing faith and tenacity. Now, why might our commentators be emphasizing the amazing faith, the amazing willingness and acceptance of the people? Well, because if you back up a few chapters, if you read anything of last week's parashah, for example, then you know that the people are not always so patient, and they're not always so believing in the modern use of that word. That is to say, they want to know, where's the food going to come from? How are we going to get across the sea? What are we going to drink? And they're not shy on asking those questions or of demanding that something be done, or even lamenting that, oh, why didn't we just stay at home? We could have died there. And this means that this understanding of the people, this unpacking of these simple words and this back and forth scene is also there to give credit to the nation, that as complaining as they are, and we're going to see them complain a whole lot more and really, really mess up with the whole golden calf thing very soon. Nonetheless, we've got to give them credit where credit is due and to accept wholeheartedly what God is offering in this covenant is to their credit. And that therefore we have to really say, yes, they meant it. They truly did accept it. And this is important, which our next text will give us in more detail. The Mechilta, again, one of the earliest Midrash collections, and all the people answered together. They did not answer deceptively, and they did not consult each other, but they were all one in heart and answered, whatever the Lord has spoken, we shall do. All right, by focusing back on that word together, that they all answered together. Let me just go ahead and put that back up on the screen. Oh, there we are. Right, that this yachdav that happens here, which comes from the Hebrew word echad, meaning one, that when they answer together, when they answer, they are answering as one. What this is trying to say, says the Mechilta, is that there wasn't consultation. There wasn't discussion. This was not a board meeting. This was not all those in favor of accepting God as our covenantal partner, raise your hand. This wasn't, well, what are the pros and cons of this? It was, here's what God is proposing, and everyone together as one immediately said, yes, whatever God has spoken, we will do. This is trying to really emphasize that this was not something they wrestled with to come to an answer. This was something that was immediately accepted in the heart of each and every one of them. And so when they answered together, we could rely that indeed they were all answering. Now, those of you who have done work with committees or large group decision making will know that that's very rarely the case. And usually the only time it is the case is only in the most extreme circumstances, often for bad cases. That usually there is an element of persuasion, and usually there's an element of bandwagoning, where somebody will propose something and a few people will say that's a good idea. Then a few more people will say, well, if all of them are thinking it's a good idea, then maybe it is a good idea. And now we've got a bunch of people doing it, and other people who don't want to be left out or think that or get the wrong impression or reputation that they were against it. And since it's going that way anyway, I better get on board. And eventually you pick up enough momentum that a decision gets made and it's done. That's not what happened here, said the Mechilta. That Yachdav, by answering together, by answering as one, we can see that this wasn't just, yeah, whatever God said. That this was not a fake answer. This was not a superficial answer. This was indeed a universal and heartfelt answer from among all the people. Okay, now we're going to take a little detour into just another fun midrash that talks about how the Torah is beneficial for us. So just bear with me for a little bit here. The Holy One, blessed be he, said there is no ailment that does not have its cure, and the cure and drug for every ailment have been predetermined. Now, as an aside, this is an incredibly important concept in general in Jewish thinking, because it means that we believe that everything in the world can be fixed. Everything in the world can be made correct. That if there is a wound, it can be healed. If there is a disease, it can be cured. If there is a social problem, we can remedy it. That God's world is capable of earthly perfection. And no, that's not exactly the same as heavenly perfection, where we are not bound by the limits of material life, but within those boundaries of the natural world, and indeed using natural law and science, we are able to do, well, just about everything that's within those bounds, that there is a way to do all of these things. Now, we are going to get some examples of this that are less scientific, less medicinal, and more spiritual based, because oftentimes many of the problems we have are not physical, they are spiritual. And sometimes there is a component of spiritual and psychological and emotional pain that goes along with the physical. And this midrash is going to walk us through that. If you desire your body to be free of pain, devote yourself to the Torah, for it is a healing balm to the entire body. That's a bold claim. Do we have some proof? We know that it is a cure for the head, since it is said, she will give to hand head a chaplet of grace. Right? From Proverbs, the idea here being that this kindness to the head, this comes from the study of wisdom. But it also works for the heart, as it is said, write them upon the table of heart, right? That this is the part that goes into us. For the neck, we also know that this is chains about the neck, and for the hands, as it is said, and it shall be a sign for you upon your hand. Now, I don't know why I ended up with a translation which doubled that word so many times. I apologize for that. So we are seeing different things here being helped by Torah. And for the navel, it is written, it shall be health to the navel. Sorry, I'm trying to figure out what was going on here. And for all the bones of the bodies, as it is said, and marrow to the bones. And Rabbi Joshua, the son of Levi, declared, the Holy One, blessed be he, demonstrated this when he gave the law, meaning our section. Prior to the departure of the Israelites from Egypt, some of them have been injured as a result of the hazardous labors they performed with mud and straw. Stones on the buildings had fallen upon them, breaking their hands and mutilating their legs. The Holy One, blessed be he, said, it is not right that I should give my law to imperfect men, meaning that if I'm giving this to them, they have to be in good condition. I don't want them accepting this because they are broken and feel they have no choice. And I don't want them thinking that they are only receiving it because they are in that state. I want them to be able to willingly and freely make a decision regarding this. And therefore, I will set them right at that moment. So that way, the decision is entirely up to them. What did he do then? He instructed his angels to descend and heal them. Now, whence do we know that none of them were blind? Okay, fine. You're telling me that the angels healed them, but how do we know that actually happened? Well, it is said, and all the people perceived the thunderings. They saw the thunderings. Well, how could they see it if they were blind? And understand that in a group of people this large, it would have been inconceivable that no one was blind for natural reasons. Therefore, this implies that there was a successful healing of any who would have been naturally blind in order that they too could see what was taking place. How do we know that there were no deaf ones among them? Again, would have been very common. It is written, we will hear, also in Exodus. Whence do we know that none of them were without hands? They said, we will do, because you do it, your action is done through the hands as a Jewish idiom. How do we know that there were none with crippled legs among them? It is written, and they stood at the nether part of the mountain, at the base of the mountain. Rabbi Yehuda, the son of Shimon, said, because they were as new. The Holy One, blessed be he, called the month Master of Renewal. Whence do we know this? We know it from that what is written about the matter in the section in the third month. So this whole section tells us that the people were made as perfect a physical condition as possible. One, so that they shouldn't still be suffering from the problems of Egypt, but more importantly, so that all of them would know what they were agreeing to, that all of them would know what was taking place, and that all of them would be able to experience it. Imagine the grief that would come if somebody was completely deaf and God was speaking to the nation and they couldn't experience it. Yes, even if God was speaking into them, and obviously that penetrates any physical ailment, they still would have missed out on the sound of the world changing around them. Likewise, those who were blind would not have been able to see the spectacle with which the tablets were given. So this was a statement of trying to prepare it so it could prepare the people so it could truly be a universal experience. And again, so it could be a completely free experience. That is to say that they would all have the ability to say yes or no, And as we saw from the Mechilta just previously, they all said yes. Okay, any questions or comments? All right, then let's move on to our final midrash on this from Shemot Rabbah. Moses reported the statement of the people to the Lord. As I said, this is our big, why are we doing a statement thing? And why are we going up and down so much? Well, Shemot Rabbah, in its typical fashion, will give us a parable that can give us a perspective that is more appropriate for human understanding. At that moment, the Holy One, blessed be he, sought to give them the Torah and to speak with them, meaning that Moses came back up and said, the people said yes. And at that moment, God is like, okay, so we're good to go. But there's a problem. The Holy One, blessed be he, said, what shall I do about Moses? What's the problem with Moses? Moses is standing right there. Good to go. Let's go, right? You know, it's all right, God, we're all on board. Everybody's agreed. So you start talking. Rabbi Levi said, this is analogous to a king who sought to issue a proclamation without the input or presence of his chief official. So the king wants to make a proclamation. He wants to come out on the balcony and address the nation. But he doesn't want his chief official to be standing next to him. So what does the king do? He said to him, to the official, do such and such. And the official responds, said to him, to the king, it's already done, because after all, he's a good official. The king then said to the official, go and summon so-and-so the advisor, and let him come with you. When he went, the king did what he sought to do. So he gave him an additional task in order to get him off the balcony, and that way the king would be free to make the declaration without the official standing next to him. Now, we're going to figure out why that's an issue and why this is so important as we go forward and we apply it, put this template over our chapter and see what was going on. So too, the Holy One, blessed be he, sought to give the Ten Commandments, just like the king on the balcony wanted to make a proclamation. Moses was standing to his side, as you would expect, because after all, Moses was just there to report what the people had said. The Holy One, blessed be he, said, when I reveal the firmament to them, meaning when I make them able to perceive heaven itself, and I say, I am the Lord your God, the beginning of the Ten Commandments, they will say, wait, who spoke? Was it the Holy One, blessed be he, or Moses? That when there are two people standing on the balcony and there's a voice shouting out to the crowd, somebody down in the crowd will rightly be able to say, well, I heard somebody say blah, blah, but there were two people there, so which one was it? Now, we know, of course, God isn't a person, but we also know that the underlying concern here is that people will think that these words issued from Moses rather than from God. And this is trying to highlight that the Torah wants to avoid that confusion, that we should understand that the Torah wasn't just something Moses thought was a good idea, but that the Torah was from God, in and of God's self, period, no assistance. Rather than, how do I avoid this problem? Let Moses descend, get off the mountain, and afterwards I will say, I am the Lord your God. Then I'll begin the Ten Commandments. So how do I make that happen? So the Holy One, blessed be he, said to Moses, go to the people and sanctify them today and tomorrow, and they will wash their garments. And Moses said to God, I already sanctified them. As it is stated, as you have warned us, saying, demarcate the mountain and sanctify it, it's in that past perfect tense, meaning that you have already warned us of that, or we had been warned. So that implies that Moses actually had already done it. So God needed an additional excuse. He said to Moses, go, descend, and you shall ascend, and Aaron with you. Go get your brother. That gets Moses off the mountain. When Moses descended, apologize, apparently a lot of people decided to text me during my class. When Moses descended, the Holy One, blessed be he, revealed himself. As it is stated, Moses descended, and immediately God spoke. So we end up at the end of the chapter with this transition, with Moses going down for the last time. And now that the balcony is clear, now we can have the Ten Commandments, and chapter 20 can get going in all of its glory. So there are so many things happening here that are giving us things to understand, to learn, and to think about, more than just we're getting ready for the Ten Commandments. It is about how we accept the covenant. It is about what God is asking us to accept. It is about the relationship between God and Moses, and between the people and Moses. And this is not just a skippable chapter that we can flip the pages on until we get to the good stuff with the Ten Commandments. Ten Commandments are really good. Don't get me wrong. They are incredibly amazing and worthy of study, which is why we have covered them before. But let's realize that this preamble is every bit as important, because without it, without God's deliberations, without Moses' participation, and most importantly, without the people's consent, none of this would have mattered, because the whole project of the people coming out of Egypt to worship God, to serve God, which was the original point of it all, would have been dead on arrival. And so ultimately, it is the nation that makes this the monumental, earth-changing event that it is. Yes, God is doing all the heavy lifting here, but that simple will do it. That moment is of such incredible import that, well, we shouldn't get lost in the bustle of preparation. So with that, we will wrap it up, unless there are any questions or comments, but I'm not seeing any. So I will wish everyone a good day, and I'll see you all next week as we continue to see what more the Torah has to teach us in a more legal section of text. Take care, everyone, and be well.